and welcome back to the Homeschooling Simplified channel. And I have Mark with me this morning. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about yourself and your work as an author?
So let's see. So I actually do not have a writing background. I studied physics in college and I taught high school physics for 15 years and then left education and went to work in industry and worked for General Electric as a research physicist for another 15 years. And while I was working at GE, I started to write books. And that's when I found that I had some skill in writing books and I really enjoy it. And I got to a point where I could leave GE, which was an incredibly stressful place to work, and just write full time and write books.
That's
And it's
awesome.
been a great experience.
So it started as a hobby and just grew.
Yep. So I thought when my son was like 4 years old, I thought I should write a book because I see the people at GE who are successful. And those are the guys who are the risk takers, who aren't afraid to fail, who aren't afraid to try something new and just figure it out. And that's not me. I'm not a fan of failing, and I don't like to just jump in and try something.
Me neither.
But how do you teach that to your son?
Yeah.
If you're not showing those traits? You know, I know exactly what I learned from my father. You work hard all the time. You know, you don't give up. You keep doing it, and you take care of your family. And this is what I saw from him. And that's what I learned from him. So how's my son going to learn these traits I want him to learn? So I thought, I'll write a book, and maybe he'll really like the characters, and he'll learn it from the characters.
Oh, awesome.
So I started writing when he was 4, and my first book was a catastrophic failure. It got rejected by 253 agents and publishers, and the next 3 books were also rejected by scores and scores of agents. It was just a bloodbath. It was not fun.
Oh, goodness. But
So
you kept at it, sounds like. So
I kept at it, and my son was cyberbullied while he was playing Minecraft on a server that he had, and some kids really picked on him, said terrible things, recorded them picking on him and posting it. It was just awful.
Yeah.
So I wrote this first book to teach him why it wasn't his fault that he was bullied, because many victims of bullying think they did something to deserve it, and that's never true.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I wrote it, read it at bedtime, and he said, "Oh, I get it. These kids are just jerks." I said, "Yay, that's right. It's not you, it's them." And then just for fun, I published it on Amazon, because why not?
Yeah.
It's really easy to self-publish, doesn't cost you a penny. And so I did, and surprisingly enough, it took off like a rocket and just climbed up the charts and was incredibly successful.
Wow.
And then agents and publishers contacted me. And so that's a whole different experience than what I first experienced.
Yeah. And just curious, did any of those who turned you down in the beginning come back and say, "Hey, we changed our mind"?
Oh, yeah. Well, the one that I ended up getting an agent. So the way publishing works is you can't send your book to a publisher. In general, they won't look at them because there's a lot of people writing books, and most of them are terrible. And so you got to get an agent, and the agent is like the filter. And so finding an agent is really important. And the agent that I ended up with, they rejected me the first time. And somebody else at the agency saw my book on the Amazon charts and said, "We probably should talk to this guy." And so I didn't hold a grudge, right?
Yeah.
That'd be stupid.
And what does being an author entail each day or each week, month?
Well, you got to keep feeding the beast, right? You got to keep writing. Sometimes you don't want to write. It's really easy to fall into the trap of, I'm going to do research, or I'm going to work on some graphics for an ad I want to run or something. It's really easy to get away from the writing because the writing's hard. And most of the time when I write, I know what I've written is garbage, and it's not fun. And it's not any good until after you've rewritten it 3 or 4 times. So when you're writing it the first time, oh, that passage is terrible, but I got to move on, and I got to keep going. And so sometimes that's not a pleasant thing, but you got to get it done so you can get to rewriting, because that's where the magic happens, is when you rewrite it. But I try to write maybe 5-6 hours a day if I can get that in. Sometimes that's tough.
Wow. Wow. And
So,
is there any type of education or training that was required?
well, I didn't have any because I studied
Yeah.
physics, right?
Right.
But certainly somebody who wants to be a writer, you want to major in English and write a lot. You know, the key to being a good writer is to write a lot and show people your stuff and try to get honest feedback. It's really hard to get honest feedback because no one wants to say, dude, that's terrible. But getting honest feedback is really valuable, because then you know what you wrote isn't any good and you have an idea for why, and then you can try to fix it.
Yeah.
So writing a lot is important, but also, you know, a lot of people think, like I thought, oh, you just become an author just because you want to write, and so there you go. That's like somebody saying, oh, I want to be a doctor, so I'm going to go be a doctor and not go to school forever, right? It's a skill like anything else. Like homeschooling is a skill, and people think, and people learned during COVID, you can't just go home and just decide you're going to homeschool your kid when you don't know how to do it and you don't have that skill. You know, you don't know where the resources are. You don't know how to do anything. And so when I started writing, I first wrote my first book, and it was a terrible, terrible work. The writing was awful because I didn't know anything. And what I learned from that first failure is I need to learn how to write. I need to learn how to write a book, a novel. And I read probably 20 books on writing.
Oh, wow.
I have a shelf just filled. I probably have 50 books on writing on the shelf over here, on how to do characters, how to do dialogue, how to do suspense. And it's something you have to learn. And one way you learn is you write, and the other way is you study, or you go to school and you learn about literature and you learn about creative writing. But you got to write.
Yeah.
Right.
I know my son's been trying to write a little bit the past year. I think just, he just has all these ideas and he wants to put them on paper, and he's definitely benefited from watching some of your videos, which began with him just reading one of your books. And then it was like, now I got to have the next book. And then it was, who is the author? I want to find out who this is. And so actually, when I asked if you would do this interview with me, it was through my son. He's like, hey, why don't you ask him? Because I said, hey, bud, do you have anybody you would like to have interviewed? And he goes, yes, I do.
It's funny.
Yeah, so I really appreciate you doing this with me today.
No, this is fun.
So you mentioned a little bit about, how many hours you write a day. How many days a week do you work, and how many hours a week? Or is it just so flexible? It just depends on what's going on?
So yeah, it depends on what's going on. There was one point when I was writing a new Minecraft book every other month. And so during that time, I was probably writing 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wow. I would suspect. That was a really busy time. Right now, I try to get 5 hours in if I can get it. I'm not just writing. I also tutor online. When COVID hit, I thought we should have another revenue stream in case my wife gets laid off or something. And so it's hard for me to get that, but I get up at probably 6 in the morning. I usually tutor in the evenings. Like today, I have students that are from 6 to 8 tonight. So I'll write all day long. And my son, when he needs help on the homeschool stuff, I stop and I work with him, but I'm writing as much as I can the whole day.
Wow. And so, when you're an author, how does the pay work? Are you hourly, by salary? Is it just by commission, book sales?
So there's a couple of ways you can do it. There's some people who like to do ghostwriting, and that means you're writing a book for somebody else. Like you see these stars who come out with a book and everybody says, wow, I didn't know you could write. Well, they probably didn't. And somebody wrote it for them. And I think those you get paid up front or a portion or something. I've never done that. If you're self-published and you publish your books on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Kobo and all the different ebook sites, you typically get paid at the end of the month for what you sold. And there's usually like a month delay, because somebody might buy your book and read it and decide they don't like it and want to get a refund. And so they usually have a delay in paying you, so those refunds are taken into account. When you're a published author with a publisher, you get paid twice a year. And so my newest book, I self-published just recently, but if it had been published with a publisher, I wouldn't see any money from that probably for a year, because you go 6 months and then we got to wait and see if there's any returns. So I get paid at the end of the next 6 months.
Okay.
So you're always like 6 months to a year delayed in getting paid, which is why when you're a published author, you'll get an advance typically. Usually they're not very much. They're $5,000 or $6,000 or something, an advance on a book that helps you while you're waiting to get paid, but you don't get any royalties until the royalties cover that advance, and then you get paid.
Okay.
So it doesn't really help.
But
the people who get those $100,000 advances, those are very, very rare.
When you are with a publisher, is there any type of quota on how many books you write? Is it 1, 2, or did they give you like a set amount?
It's a kind of a funny story. So when I got hooked up with the publisher, they knew the first book was out. And I said, and when I'd spoken to him, I had said, oh yeah, we got the second book ready to go. And so the publisher gave me a contract for those two. And I met with him. I went down, I'm in Albany. So my wife and I drove down to New York City, where the publisher was, to have lunch with him, to meet with him face to face. And at lunch, I said, oh yeah, my wife mentioned the third book, which I wasn't going to say anything yet, but she mentioned that. And he said, oh, really? That's interesting. Do you have a cover for it yet? So I got out my phone and I showed him, And then I walked from there to the agent's office to talk with them. By the time I got there, they already had a contract for the third book, which was kind of funny. And then once the first two books were sold, well, once the first two books were out and sales were good, the publisher said, hey, don't kill the bad guy. Sales are really good. We need another series. And so they gave me a contract for another 3 books. And at the end of that one, they said, boy, sales are still good. Don't kill the bad guy. We need another 3. This is really unusual for authors, right? To get a series is an incredible gift. To get a second series is like, wow, that doesn't happen all the time. So I was lucky, because when I wrote these Minecraft novels, there was only one other book on Amazon that was a novel about Minecraft.
Wow.
And so they had the choice of two of us. And when I paid an artist to make my cover, that's when my sales went over the competitors and just took off at a higher rate, because of that little thumbnail on Amazon, right? That's very important thing.
It is. It's how we perceive things. We look at things. We're like, oh, that looks better than the other. I'm going to get that one instead.
But certainly there's contracts out there for authors that the person says, I'm working on this book, and they really like it, and they say, oh yeah, I have ideas for the next 2, but I haven't really written anything. They'll put together a contract committing the author to a 3-book series with delivery dates that you got to hit. And usually there's some kind of penalty or something or other. I don't think I ever had any penalty things, but they got to get in line at a printer. And so you have your time at the printer, and if you miss your time for that book, then you got to go back in line. So you can't miss your printing window.
When you have time frames set for you, does it make it more stressful writing?
Oh yeah, the biggest stressful thing was when I know I got a book due in 6 months, let's say, and you're just starting it and you're staring at a blank page, that is terrifying. Because you start with, I don't have an idea, and I got 6 months to write this 300-page novel, and that's really terrifying. And so that's a whole process on goofy things I do to come up with an idea, But yeah, the deadlines are not nice, but if you didn't have a deadline, you'd probably never finish too.
True.
Right? You can always edit. You can always, I want to improve this part. And so having a deadline is good because it forces you to finish.
Yep. We have definitely found that out in homeschooling, because if you don't set a goal or an end date when something needs to be finished, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it the next day. And you just keep putting it off, and then it's never done.
And there's no sense of urgency to get it done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Or fine tune things. Oh, it's a week till it's due. I'm going to fine tune it and make sure it's how I want it.
Right.
Yeah. And so my next question would be, so your inspiration, you said your first one came from your son. Is it still come from your son? Do you play Minecraft yourself?
So I played Minecraft with him, and I really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And we got him a server at Christmas, and he really liked that. And that's when he invited everybody on the internet, and the bullies came.
Yeah.
Later, when the books were successful, I found a guy in England who really knows how to program the Minecraft servers. And he and I put together a server for the readers of my books. And I would play Minecraft frequently with the readers so they could chase me around. My Minecraft name was Monkey Pants. And they'd see Monkey Pants, and I was like the Pied Piper. Everybody would come at me with their swords. Everybody wanted to be the one to kill Monkey Pants.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was fun to be able to talk with them, and they'd have questions about writing and about characters and stuff, but they really liked to attack me. And so that's okay.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when the books went international, and they've been published in 31 countries, at some point, people from other countries started coming in and really attacking the server and really trying to destroy everything or do things that can overload the server and make it so that world file that everybody's work in gets corrupted, and now you can't load it. And boy, it became such a problem that eventually I just shut it down. I just couldn't do it. I felt bad because it's fun work, playing with the kids, and they're reading my books, and now here they get to see me in Minecraft, but it became so much work and so much expense to continually repair it that I had to shut it down. And that was a great source of inspiration for coming up with the next Minecraft book, was to go into Minecraft and see what kids are doing and see what kids are building, and that would frequently give me an idea for a book.
Yeah. And what kind of job opportunities do you feel there are out there for authors? Is there a lot, or just
so
depends?
It's a really tough occupation, and it is not one that you get rich at. That's a common misconception that people think I'm going to write a book and I'm going to get rich. And something like, if you go into a Barnes and Noble and you look at all the books there, maybe 0.5% of the authors do it as for a living, and everyone else is a midnight writer, they call them. That they're writing from 9 o'clock to midnight is when they get to work on their book, because you got to work to put food on the table, and so that's a challenge. There's other jobs. You could be a freelance writer, and you could write articles for magazines and get paid, or write for blogs. That's a big source of income for people if you're good at that. I'm not good at that, and I couldn't figure out how to break into it. And the biggest challenge is, if someone wants to be a writer, breaking into the field is very difficult, because nobody trusts you because you have nothing published. Right? That's why most authors get rejected by agents, is what they say has to be really spectacular for them to take a risk on an author that's never been published, because the agent doesn't get paid unless the books sell. And so typically new authors just get continually rejected. And if you want to write for a blog or a magazine or something, it's really hard to get published, to get into a good situation where you can write lots of articles and make some money. People do it. I don't know how they get into it at first. I think you do a lot of work for free and try to establish a reputation.
Yeah.
And then once you have a reputation, then you do it. But now you're doing it at midnight, right? So it's really difficult to break into it.
So that kind of comes into my next question, which is, what is the best and worst part of being an author? So would that be one?
So, yeah. And, right now, so the best part is getting to write and getting your book and getting it so it feels like it's finished, right? And then when you go to release it, sometimes they don't sell, and that sucks. Let me tell you, that sucks a lot. My last couple Minecraft books that I wrote did really poorly. They didn't sell well at all, and that's really depressing. And so it's nice to be validated with sales, but sometimes that validation hurts. And you get people that don't like your reading. I remember once somebody thought my books were terrible because there were people with swords, and it was right near one of the mass shootings at a school, and so they were saying I'm promoting violence and making kids want to go kill other kids. And it was really a disturbing comment that really made me question what I was doing. Some of the comments can be really brutal.
Yeah.
And that's a hard part about the writing, is people will tell you what they think, whether you want to know it or not.
Right.
And all the successful authors say, don't read your reviews. And I've come to understand that now. You never look at the reviews, because the good ones, well, they're just boosting your ego. The bad ones, you don't know why they don't like your book, but they don't give you any meaningful feedback to improve it. They just want to lash out.
What is the work-family life balance like?
So it was certainly tough when I was doing a book every other month.
I bet.
My family was very supportive of that and understood. And there were times when I needed to help my son. My son does, I mentioned he's homeschooled. He does an online school where they set the curriculum, and I help him when he needs it. So like right now he's taking chemistry, and I'm helping him with chemistry. But he does a lot of the work on his own. But there's times when he needs work done, and he knows he's going to need to work on something. So I get up at 3 a.m. and I write from 3 to noon, and then he has me in the afternoon. So when I was doing a book every other month, it was really hard. And my wife stepped up, and she did the cooking, and she did the cleaning, and she did everything, and I just wrote. Right now it's not as bad because I'm just self-publishing. And so I have more freedom to my timing, but I know I have to have a book out in February, and I have to have another book out in October of next year. And I have those things looming on me all the time. And so anytime I have free time, I write.
Right. Yeah. Especially with holidays coming up, it's going to be getting busy, and
yep, it's going to get really busy, but
yeah.
I have to get the books done. And so if I need a book done that I want to release in February, the second book in a series, I need to have it done probably before December, which seems impossible right now. But because I got to get it I have to rewrite it a bunch of times. Then I have to give it to an editor and pay an editor to go through it, to tell me what problems are there from a construction standpoint. Maybe the characters aren't that believable. They don't just fix grammar. They will fix plot and flow and pacing.
Oh, wow.
And that takes them a couple of weeks to do that. And you got to wait in line when you do it. Or I say to them, okay, February 1st, I'm going to be done. So save my spot now. And then you got to be done February 1st, because if you're not done, they're moving on to the next book.
And so the sequence of how it works is you do your writing, and then it goes to the editor?
Yep, I do the writing, and then I do the rewriting, and then I'll run it through a piece of software called Grammarly. I don't know if you've ever seen this software before.
Yes. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And there's a professional version that I've purchased. It costs like $100 a year. And it looks at more than just grammar. It looks at passive verbs. It looks at phrasing. It tells you more than you want to know, but it gives you tons of feedback. And it'll take me a week to go through the whole book with Grammarly. And then I'll give it to the editor. There's a woman in California that I met and I like to use. And it cost me about $1,500 for her to go through my book. And she'll go through it and make a ton of comments, and then we'll meet on the phone and go back and forth and go over it. And then it'll take me a week or two to go fix all the things she says I need to fix. And then it's ready to go. During that time, I'll get a cover made. And I'll get the cover. I have an artist working on the cover right now for book 2 of the series. And that'll be done in parallel.
Okay.
And once it's edited and everything, then I'll go through and pretty up the interior so it looks professional. The margins look nice and the font looks nice and, all that kind of stuff. And then I'll upload it to Amazon and hit publish.
Okay. That's incredible. That just blows my mind, actually, because I had no idea about any of that. You just, like, for me, instance, I find a book, if I'm in a bookstore or I'm shopping online, I'm like, I want to read that. I get it and I read. I don't think about all the steps it takes. I'm just like, this is a great book.
So when I was doing it, when I was working with a publisher, I would write the book and then I would give it to him, and the main editor would look at it, and he just does high-level stuff. He says, I think it's too slow here. We need to speed this up. Can you reinforce this theme here? Can you do that? And then I fix that stuff, and I give it to him. And then he kind of reads it, and he says, yeah, okay, that sounds good. And then he hands it to another editor, and somebody else reads it and sends me back comments. And I fix those, or I don't agree with their comment, and I reject it, which you can do. These guys are in the business of selling books, so I usually agree with them. And then I'll fix that. Then it'll go to another editor, and they'll go through it and send it back to me. And once that's good, then it'll go to somebody who will put it in the form it's going to be in the book. So they'll use the font, they'll use the titles, they'll use the graphics, everything. And then I have to go through and look for any typos or anything. And many of my early books have a lot of typos in them because this publisher was not very good at finding those typos, and I assumed they were, and that was a mistake. I should have been responsible for it, and it took me a while to realize that. So I would get the last book back, and I would scrutinize every word, and I would read it out loud to find the typos, because reading it silently, you can't find them, because you just go over all those construction words, right? Mm-hmm. You don't really see the to's and the is's and the r's, and is it A-R-E or O-U-R? When you're reading, you might not notice. Yeah. When you read it out loud, you do. Mm-hmm. And I'd read it out loud and mark it up, and then go tell them we got to fix this and that and this and that. And then it will go to the printer.
I agree with that. We do that when we write papers here at the house. We read them out loud. Does this flow right? Does it sound right?
Yeah. Because you can tell, you read it out loud, and it's like you got marbles in your mouth sometimes because you can't do the words. Mm-hmm. And that means the phrasing's not right or the grammar's not right. Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's the biggest misconception people have about your type of work?
Well, I think it's that, I talk with a lot of kids, and they think they're going to write their story and go get it published. And it's such an astronomically difficult task to get published, and people think they're going to get rich doing this. And boy, nobody's getting rich other than Stephen King and John Grisham and, the big guys. Nobody's getting rich doing this. It's just, if you're lucky, it's a good paying hobby. Right. And so those are really the big misconceptions. It's really hard to get into it, because no one wants to trust somebody who isn't published. And right now, the book I just released is a fantasy book about giants, and no publisher wanted to touch it. And I got about 24 books published, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody wanted to do it because they say right now, if you're not Harry Potter or Twilight or Percy Jackson, fantasy doesn't sell right now, which I don't think is true.
Right.
And so they told me that 2 years ago. And so I worked on some other stuff, and I've decided I want to see if it's true. And so I'm going to publish this book about giants. And I'm learning about advertising, how you advertise a book as a self-published author, and learning about cover design and what's really important in a cover. And I'm doing the advertising, and I'm designing the cover with artists to make pieces for me, and I'm learning how to do it.
Wow.
And maybe they're right. And maybe I'm going to spend $5,000, $6,000 on advertising to sell 100 books. Well, that's not a profitable deal. But you don't know unless you try.
Right, right. Like you mentioned in the beginning of the interview, taking risks just to see. Yep. And did you see yourself doing this type of work when you were a child?
No. I never thought. I remember when I was like 13, I was on a school trip on a bus, and I started writing a story. And I thought, wow, this is really cool. I really like doing this, but I was terrified to show it to anyone. And I just the interest kind of fizzled. And it took me 40 years to do it again, Yeah. But I never thought I would be an author. That was never in the plans, right? I started out in college doing music and realized you practice all the time, and I hate practicing. And I ended up shifting to physics and really loved studying physics. And so I was going to do physics for my whole life, as far as I was concerned. Yeah. So this was just a lucky accident based on a terrible, terrible event that ended up having me write all these books and meet all these kids.
Yeah.
It's a funny set of circumstances.
Yeah. What we do for our children, and then for you, it ended up being much more.
Yeah.
You don't know how many children you probably affected by giving them book one, talking about bullies. And so we mentioned some pros and cons along the way, but is there any that we didn't talk about that you have that maybe someone who wants to be an author or wants to sell books, they just don't know?
What I've learned is I've gone to a lot of writing conferences. There's a great conference in New York City that I went to every year for probably 4 years. And I meet a lot of young writers. They all seem to be 20 something. And they got their first book and they're trying to get it published, and they're probably not going to get it published. And what I would hear is, if I don't get this published, I'm just going to give up. And they don't understand that you have to commit to a lot of books to learn the craft and to get recognized by people who will take a chance on you. And so you can't write one story and then if you're not successful, you say, well, I'm done. I give up. That's like the doctor who's in one class in medical school and has a hard time, right?
Yeah.
You got to keep chipping away at it. And so for these books that I'm writing right now, I know this first book isn't going to make any money because of the amount of advertising I'm putting into it and the cover and all that kind of stuff. And I'm using the first 3 books to try to build a readership so the next 3 books will be profitable. And so that's my plan, because I know it's going to be hard. Mm-hmm. And authors that write the first book they write and then it's not right and they don't like it or no one likes it, well, that's just because you're still learning the craft and you need to write another and you need to write another. Almost every author I've met who has been traditionally published and successful wrote 4 or 5 books before that were crap, before they started to figure out how to do it. And I think it was James Patterson who said, you really don't know how to write until you've written 1 million words. And I look at my Minecraft books and each one is about 60,000 words or so. When I look at where 1 million is, after that point, my writing is substantially better than at the beginning.
So
So a
tried and
million words
true.
is a lot, but seems to be that's what it takes.
And last question would be, do you have any encouragement for those interested in writing? There are things right now, which I know you just talked about that a little bit, but let's say they're just writing their first book or they're thinking about it. You got any encouraging words for them?
Well, I'd certainly say if they're a young writer and they're school age or something, there's a great book called Spilling Ink, which is a writing book made for kids. Most of the writing books on my shelf, they'll use examples from these books I've never heard of that if I was an English major, I would have realized what they're talking about, right? But a lot of the books on how to do characters and how to do plot are really complex books that a kid or even a high school kid would have a hard time reading it. And so this book, Spilling Ink, is a great resource to help you learn the craft. But it's important to learn the craft by writing a lot. And you got to commit to writing 10 stories and putting them out there for people to look at. I get a ton of stories that, and your son can do this as well. I get people email me stories, kids, that they've written, and I post them on my website.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people go to Wattpad or fanfiction.com and they post them there, and the comments can be really, really cruel on those sites.
Yeah,
right? I'm sure you've seen those, right?
Well, my son didn't know about this until, I think this month. But he posted a story of his on your website, and he thinks that's the coolest thing.
Oh,
And I think that's cool too.
yeah.
It gives him, like you said, feedback.
You get feedback, you get the self-esteem of feeling good about it, and every comment that somebody puts in there goes through me. And I don't post the ones that are disrespectful or mean, or they feel like they want to correct the person who's writing. You don't need that right now. You just need to write.
Yeah.
And so I make sure it's a safe space for kids. And seeing your work up there and then seeing somebody comment on it and they like it, man, you're really motivated to write the next story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you can see what other people write and learn from them, and it's a great experience. And so I think writing is really important. Getting it to an authentic audience is really valuable, but learning the craft and looking for things where you can learn how to do it. Spilling Ink is a great one. There's not a lot of books for kids other than that one. The favorite of mine that I've read multiple times is called Story Physics. And it breaks down how to do plot like it's a science, which resonates with me, right? But it breaks down that this is the way you break down your plot, and this is what you do on all of the individual parts of that. And some of those lessons I've put in the writing tips that are on my website.
Yeah, so you have some writing resources. Tell us about those.
So I found that I'd be sitting working on a book and I have trouble with a passage. And when I would think about how I'm going to solve this problem, I started just writing down, how am I going to do it? Like, I was working on a chapter last night, and I wanted to show that the villain is really mean, but I don't want to say the villain is mean, because that's telling, not showing. And so I would work on a strategy. How am I going to do that? Well, he's going to do something to other people to make him look mean. He's going to whip his horse unnecessarily hard to get it to go fast. He's going to say things that are kind of disrespectful to people around him, because I want the reader, the thing you want readers to do is to love to hate your villain, because the hero is only as good as the villain is bad. So, and I'm going to put together a writing tip about this. So I started thinking about how am I going to do it in this chapter, and I kind of thought about it, and I jotted down some notes, and I came up with a strategy for how to do it. And then I go and I put that on my website, and I type up how I would do it, and I give examples of the stuff I wrote. And so for kids that like to read, read on the screen, they can read how I solved this problem in my story. And they can also, I record a video of me talking about it. So if they're a visual learner, they can watch it on the screen and they can hear me talk about how I'm going to solve this problem. And these are short little 10-minute videos, if even that long. And I started putting those on there, and I don't know, there's 20 of them on there now, maybe. I keep trying to find the time to add more. It's just having the time to add more. But a number of teachers use these in class, especially right now in the month of November. November is the NaNoWriMo month. I don't know if you've heard of this. The National Novel Writing Month, put together by the National Writing Project, which is part of the National Council of Arts or something like that. And there's a bunch of resources on nanowrimo.com. And there's a young writers program, and a number of elementary schools will have their kids focus on writing during the month of November. And there's a thing you can use to track your progress, and you can talk to other people who are doing it and form a group and watch each other's progress. It's a great thing.
Wow. I didn't know about that.
So this is really a neat thing to see. And so I joined one elementary school. I joined their class for NaNoWriMo. And so I'm working on my book, and they're working on their stories, and we're watching each other's progress. And it's kind of funny that it's surprising how motivating it is knowing those kids, those 10-year-olds, are going to see whether I wrote today or not. And it makes me find the time to write.
Yeah.
But anyways, the teacher will use those videos, and as part of her lesson, okay, go watch the video on dialogue, because we're going to talk about dialogue today. Or go watch the video on show, don't tell, and see what that one's like. And they'll use it as a teaching tool, which is what I had intended. But sometimes during writing hours, this teacher would say the kids would be writing their story and they're having trouble, and they'd go to my website and find the writing tip and watch that lesson and then go back to writing. So it's a fun way to share what I've learned.
I know that we've had my son, he's watched a couple of your videos that you've had on your YouTube channel, and I was blown away just by, like you said, 10 minutes and under, the things that he learned is incredible. And then he took some of that, I think the video was on writing about the protagonist and all of that. And he actually then shared it with another friend, was like, hey, I'm writing and this is what you need to do. And he's like, how'd you know all that? And he's like, oh, you got to go watch this video. So,
I mean, it's not hard when it's explained at a reasonable level. When you see these books, I mean, you can go on Amazon and look for writing a novel, and you'll find 1,000 books there, right? Those are really complicated and are unnecessarily complicated. But I think that's the style of writing these books for adults. And they're totally unattainable for kids to read and understand.
Yeah.
And so I'm practical, and I like things. I do things by observing patterns. That's how I do it. And that's how I used to teach. And that's how I did research, was observing patterns. And there's patterns in writing. And if you learn those patterns, then it's easier to write.
Yeah.
So that's what these are the patterns that I use when I'm writing a novel.
I really thank you for doing this interview with me. If you don't mind, my son's actually wanting to come in and just say hello.
Absolutely.
All right. So here's Alakai.
Hey, Alakai. So which was your story?
As the Battle of the Crystal Wizard.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
Thanks.
So are you going to write another one?
Yeah, I actually have 6 books written right now.
Really? Wow. So let me tell you a secret. I guess your mom can't hear right now, right?
No.
But she'll watch the video, so she'll know. So if your story is longer than 24 pages, you can put it on Amazon and self-publish it.
Yeah.
So if you have a story, or you have the collection of your stories, you could self-publish it on Amazon and it'll be on there for other people to see. You might not sell a lot of copies, but it's kind of cool having your book on Amazon.
Yeah, we're trying to post my first one on there right now. We're just working out some of the issues.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Very exciting. Which one is this?
The same one, The Battle of the Crystal
same one?
Weather.
So I don't know if they still, when I first started, there was that limit of you had to have 24 pages. I don't know if that's still the case or not.
I don't think so. We haven't run into that problem.
How many pages is yours?
6 chapters, 2 pages each, so
12?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. They don't make you do the longer ones. Because if it has to be longer, you know what you do? You double space it.
Yeah.
And now it's twice as long, right?
Yeah, or just put 2 books together or something.
Yeah. I had one kid that was 8 years old, maybe, and he published his story on Amazon. Every paragraph was a page. And they don't care. And now he's 8 years old and he can say he has a book on Amazon. How cool is that, right?
Yeah.
And when you're the author, you get to order copies for really cheap. So my newest book is 300 pages long or so. I can order copies for myself, and I think they're like $4 each. So I can order copies and give them to friends, and I don't have to pay whatever the retail price is.
Yeah, that's cool.
You know, so you can do that when you're the published author, and that's convenient as well.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on
Thanks.
getting this published. That's going to be super exciting.
Yep. I have a couple of neighborhood kids.
What are you doing for a cover?
Well, I just put the title on there, and I kind of put like a background of a Minecraft block and a picture.
So if you go to a site called Fiverr, Fiverr, there's 2 R's.com. There are people there that will make a book cover for you that's relatively inexpensive, like $10 or $5 or something. So if you want to have somebody make it for you that has more graphic art skill than you have, you can go to Fiverr.com and they'll do it for you. That's how I got my first cover made for my book, is on Fiverr. And I think I paid $50 maybe. But,
Earplugs are falling out, sorry.
So look at Fiverr and see if that's something you'd want to do.
Okay.
And you can, if you want a nicer cover than what you're able to make, that's one way to do it. I always pay an artist to make my covers because I'm not an artist and I'm not a graphic arts guy. And so it's always better when somebody who knows what they're doing makes it.
Yeah.
But that's up to you because you're the author, so you're the boss.
So also, what kind of program do you use to type your books out?
I just use Word and I type it on there. A thing you need to do when you publish it is make sure it's left and right justified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when I first did it, I just left justified and the right side was kind of jaggedy, and I got all kinds of really nasty comments from people about that. So justify both sides. It'll do it for you automatically if it's in Word.
I use the Apache Open Office because it's the only program we have on the working computer that I use. So.
But I bet you it will justify the left and right side automatically.
Yeah.
You just have to choose that option.
Yeah.
So, very cool. That's very exciting.
Yeah.
So, send me another story so I can put it on my website.
I was actually going to do it the other day, so. And then
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and do that whenever I get the time.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, good luck with the book. That'll be very exciting.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Okay. You too. Bye.
Bye.
So thank you again for taking so much time out of your day to do this with us. We really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
All right. You take care and have a good day.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.